My wife said she didn't love me anymore. Then she disappeared with our daughters, changed their names and told everyone I was a monster. For 5 years I was hunted by a lie, until one photo changed everything. Hey there and thanks for tuning in. It's been a little over 5 years since my wife of 15 years, Rebecca Ann Cooper, who at the time worked as a branch manager at Wells Fargo, told me she wanted a divorce. Her reasoning was blunt: I just don't love you anymore. She insisted there was no one else and said we had simply grown apart. I wasn't entirely convinced, but I never had solid proof to go on. Not long after that conversation, though, I caught her whispering on the phone about some major changes happening in her life. That stuck with me. We agreed on joint custody of our 2 daughters, who were 14 and 12 back then. But when they each sat down with court-appointed counselors during the process, they both said they wanted to stay with their mom. The reason I'm bringing all of this up now is because of something I read in the paper just this past Thursday. It hit me like a freight train. There was an article about Rebecca, though she now goes by Rebecca Ann Morgan. It said she's a regional junior VP and that she and her husband, Senior VP Thomas Morgan, had attended some big charity gala in New York. There was even a photo of them, all dressed to the nines, alongside our daughters, now 19 and 17, who were listed as Amanda and Rachel Morgan. The write-up described them as rising stars. That's when it really hit me. Yep, that was definitely Rebecca. She had climbed the ladder and secured the status and recognition she always chased. The article also mentioned that her husband was someone I once considered a friend. We'd all met not long after Rebecca began working with him at our local Wells Fargo branch. What stung most was seeing that even though Amanda and Rachel are my children by blood, they've taken on someone else's last name and, by all appearances, live under a new identity I never agreed to. Feeling uneasy, I called in my assistant, Denise Holloway, to double-check what I'd just read. Denise, who also happens to be a distant relative of Rebecca's, was out that day handling some personal matters. I remember the day our divorce was supposed to be finalized. Rebecca didn't show. I asked my attorney to figure out what was going on before the judge moved forward without her. The judge had required us both to appear in person to confirm that we understood and accepted the final terms. That's when her lawyer admitted she'd been relocated, transferred to another state entirely. My lawyer turned to me and asked if I'd consented to the girls being taken out of state. I hadn't. That's when things started spiraling fast. Judge Harold Preston's demeanor changed on the spot. He told me to step outside the courtroom and try to get in touch with them immediately. I tried calling all 3, Rebecca, Amanda, and Rachel, but every number I had for them had already been disconnected. When I tried checking their social media profiles, I was hit with another punch to the gut. I'd been blocked and unfriended across the board. I headed back into the courtroom and quietly passed that bit of information to my attorney, who then brought it to the judge's attention. Judge Preston didn't waste time. He immediately issued a bench warrant for Rebecca's arrest, charging her with parental abduction. He also put the entire divorce on hold until she showed up in court, with our daughters in tow. Her attorney looked like he'd swallowed a lemon, arguing passionately that the judge was being too harsh, trying to appeal to his sense of fairness. But Judge Preston stood his ground. Not long into the investigation, the local authorities filled me in. Apparently, members of Rebecca's family had told them that she requested an out-of-state transfer because she felt I was a danger to the girls. Bank staff at our local Wells Fargo branch were quick to echo those concerns, but none of them could point to a single shred of proof. It was all based on what Rebecca had said over and over. And somewhere along the way they just decided it must be true. Even Child Protective Services had conducted interviews with Amanda and Rachel and found absolutely no reason to believe I'd ever harmed them or made them feel unsafe. But rumors, as you can imagine, spread like wildfire, especially in a small town. Folks from Rebecca's extended family added fuel to the fire, whispering things that painted me as some kind of villain. 5 years of that takes its toll. One thing that kept me sane was my unlikely friendship with Judge Preston. We'd bonded over our shared love of fly fishing long before any of this started. It wasn't unusual for me to stop by his place in the evenings for a visit, so that night, I showed up after dinner with a couple of cold beers in hand. He answered the door and led me in, his wife Ruth giving me a warm hello as I stepped into the kitchen. But the moment I showed him what I had in my hand, the mood changed instantly. I handed him a copy of that morning's newspaper. His jaw clenched as he stared at the photo on the front page. "Is this real?" he asked, already dialing his phone. "It's the first real lead we've had in 5 years," I told him. "That's Rebecca, and that's her new husband, Thomas Morgan. And right there in the second photo, those are Amanda and Rachel. But now they go by Morgan too." I'll never forget the fury in his voice. "This is a federal matter now," he said to Ruth, who'd come in to see what was happening. "Interstate kidnapping? We're calling the FBI." Ruth just shook her head. "What a mess. Why didn't the bank help you earlier?" I didn't even have an answer for her. I tried everything. For years, Wells Fargo gave me nothing but stone walls. Later that same day, as things were winding down in the office, my assistant Denise knocked gently on my door. "John," she said, "there are 2 men here from the FBI. Should I send them in?" I stood up immediately. "Absolutely. I've been waiting for them." They stepped inside, tall, serious, the kind of men who didn't waste words. The one on the left extended his hand. "Mr. Walker? I'm Agent Holmes, and this is my partner, Douglas Dale. We're here to get a full account of what's been going on." I sat down with Agents Holmes and Dale and laid it all out for them, how I'd met Rebecca's new husband, Thomas, years ago. We were all just acquaintances back then, friendly enough. That's what makes all of this feel so calculated. Nothing about her choices was accidental. Every step she took was intentional. "Max," Agent Dale nodded grimly. "That doesn't match what she told us during her interview in New York this morning," he said. Agent Holmes leaned in slightly. "When was the last time you actually spoke to her?" I didn't even have to think. "That would have been 2 weekends before what was supposed to be our final court date," I told them. Rebecca and the girls came by to pick up the last of their belongings. Child Protective Services had already met with the girls, and by then, they'd both made it clear they were staying with her full-time. Their expressions didn't change, but I could sense the shift in the room. They were starting to realize just how deep this ran. Later that evening, I stopped by my assistant's office. Denise had returned that day, and when I saw her, I could tell she'd already heard about everything. She looked up at me with a mix of concern and cautious hope in her eyes. She had questions, so many, but she didn't ask. Not yet. There was still too much we didn't know. As I grabbed my coat to head out, I turned to her. "Denise, once I leave tonight, I'll be turning off my cell. If anything urgent comes up, anything related to this mess, trust your judgment. If it's serious, call me at home." Denise had her own reasons for despising what Rebecca had done, not just for what it did to me but for the damage it caused my reputation, and to the man she had come to care about over the years. Her late husband, a serviceman, had passed away while deployed, before they ever got the chance to start a family. When she needed someone to lean on, I was there. I stood beside her when she laid him to rest. And over time she had become more than just my assistant. She had become my closest confidant, my best friend. Watching me walk through my own personal nightmare over the past 5 years helped her see something in me she hadn't seen before. That maybe, just maybe, I was the man she could grow old with. But even with her support, I still couldn't escape the past. It haunted me, every day. The voices, the silence, the betrayal. All of it lingered like a weight I couldn't shake off. I remember saying something to Roger, one of the few people I used to call a friend. We were sitting across from each other during a late lunch and I was too tired for small talk. "When they can prove what happened, when they bring me solid evidence, put it on my desk. I'll listen," I said, my voice cold. "Until then, none of this matters. Every conversation, every explanation, it's all noise. As far as I'm concerned, you're all dead to me." Roger looked wounded. "John, that's harsh," he said quietly. "But I get it. I really do." "Do you?" I replied. "I'm just treating you the way you've treated me since all this began. Think about that. Let it sit with you for a while. And now, if you don't mind, I'd like to finish my meal in peace." I could tell it hit him, but I didn't have the energy to care. It was too much. Too many people in this town had taken sides. Too many chose to believe what they were told without ever asking me. That weekend I kept things simple. 2 quiet nights, just me and a plate of eggs and toast. Nothing fancy. Just enough to fill the emptiness. Then came Monday morning. It was early Monday morning and I was already in the office, pouring the first pot of coffee for the day. I had the newspaper open beside me, hoping, maybe foolishly, for some kind of update. But there was nothing. Not a mention. I guess I had expected too much too fast. Then, a bit earlier than usual, Denise showed up, nearly half an hour ahead of her normal time. I could tell right away that something had her buzzing. She was practically glowing with energy. After grabbing herself a cup of coffee, she walked over and sat down with me, clearly riding a wave of excitement. Thinking back on it, it's wild how quickly memories rush in. Rebecca and I had gotten married just after she graduated college. Feels like a lifetime ago. And now, here I was, still sipping coffee alone on a Monday, wondering how this had all gone so sideways. As Denise stood to head to her desk, she looked back at me with a playful grin. You know, boss, some of us single ladies wouldn't mind trying out an early morning fishing trip, she said, her voice light but teasing. I hadn't laughed like that in years. A real laugh. Caught me off guard, but it felt good. Later that day, as I was heading out, I turned to her and said, "Thanks, Denise, for making me laugh today." She gave me a soft smile. Anytime. Denise has always been my anchor. Truthfully, I'm not sure I'd have made it through these past 5 years without her steady presence. That afternoon, she handed me a manila folder. Inside was the full address of the Morgans' New York property, along with a breakdown of their estimated net worth. "You've got a 2 p.m. appointment with the civil attorney," she said, not missing a beat. "Make sure they understand that Rebecca needs to be served before any charges go forward. And also, let them know you're requesting a court order to freeze her and Thomas Morgan's assets." I exhaled and shook my head. "You really don't leave anything to chance, do you?" Denise raised an eyebrow. "If I ever run into that woman face to face, I can't promise I'd keep my composure." I believed her. Later, around 4:30, I returned to the office with a chilled bottle of champagne. A gesture, maybe, of thanks, or maybe just a little hope creeping back in. "I appreciate this," Denise said with a genuine smile. "And as for the divorce," I said, pulling out the paperwork, "I'm willing to finalize it with favorable terms, as long as she appears in my courtroom. Even if that has to happen over video. I just want this part of it over." Judge Preston called later that evening. His voice was serious. "I'm going to hold her accountable," he said firmly. "Her actions, her disappearance, the lies, the custody violation, they're going to be addressed as the serious offenses they are." After we ended the call, Denise glanced up from her desk. "He's going to come down hard on her, isn't he?" I nodded. "He will." She hesitated, then asked the question I knew was coming. "But can he actually put her in jail?" I told Denise, quietly but firmly, the kidnapping charges and anything tied to that, that's up to the FBI now. But as far as contempt of court goes, Judge Preston can absolutely throw the book at her. Later that evening, I stumbled across a newspaper editorial that hit close to home. It started with a loaded question. When we hear the word kidnapping, do we really understand what it means? The reporter went on to explain how, under federal law, kidnapping doesn't just mean someone snatching a person off the street. It includes using deception, fear, or manipulation to remove or hold someone against their will. It can be physical or psychological. And it doesn't matter if the victims are your own children. If it's done to gain control or benefit in any way, it's still kidnapping. It's a felony. A serious one. And the average sentence? 12 years behind bars. That was just one of the charges now looming over Rebecca and Thomas Morgan. The same article dove into even darker territory, accusations Rebecca had spread behind my back. She had told over 20 of her relatives and friends that she left me because I had abused our daughters. That I was some kind of monster. She didn't just say it in anger, she weaponized it. She let it fester, let it define me in people's eyes. And 5 years later, I'm still living in the shadow of those lies. Even the local police admitted they were still fielding anonymous calls and reports accusing me of being a predator. But they also stated plainly that those claims were baseless. Fabricated. There was no evidence. There never had been. Still, once a rumor like that gets out in a tight-knit community, it sticks. It ruins more than your reputation. It poisons your entire life. I'd become a ghost in my own town. My neighbors looked away. My own family had pulled back. It was like I'd been erased. When I was asked in an off-the-record conversation whether it was really that bad, the officer looked me in the eye and said, "We still have 2 open attempted assaults tied to your name. Strangers trying to take justice into their own hands based on hearsay." That's when it hit me. Once this was all behind me, I was done. I would sell the business, disappear from this place, and never look back. But only if Denise was willing to come with me. Before I left the office that night, I clipped the article along with the 2 photographs from the paper and scanned them into my computer. I printed out clean copies, tucked them into a legal envelope, and set them aside for my civil attorney to use as evidence. A few hours later, I heard from one of the agents. Turns out the FBI had made their move. Amanda Morgan, my oldest daughter, had been completely blindsided when federal agents took her mother and stepfather into custody. She hadn't seen it coming. Apparently, Amanda had overheard a conversation years ago, back when she was just a young teenager. Rebecca had sat across the dinner table from me, calmly sipping coffee, and told me she didn't love me anymore. She wanted a divorce. Just like that. No emotion. No remorse. As if I was disposable. "She'll find another sucker," she'd said once. "Men are easy." There's always someone willing to pick up the pieces. Reading those words in print, seeing them quoted in the article, made it real in a way I hadn't expected. Now, with new details about her early relationship with Thomas surfacing, even Amanda was starting to ask the hard questions. Questions I had been asking myself for years. As I watched the sky from the airport terminal, boarding pass in hand and heart heavy, I realized I had sacrificed so much just to survive this. And now I had no choice but to let go. To sell everything and start fresh. It was the second attack that nearly killed me. They'd come from behind, cowards always do, and by the time help arrived I had already lost a lot of blood. The doctor said another few minutes and I wouldn't have made it. That assault was the final straw. That's what finally made me pack up and disappear. Folks around here, they wanted me gone. Some wanted more than that. They were convinced I had done something unspeakable, convinced I had hurt my own daughters. Many believed Amanda and Rachel were long dead, and that I was responsible. In their minds I was a monster walking free. I was a ghost. A man sentenced by rumor and rage. I managed to buy a place out in the country dirt cheap. No surprise, people assumed it was cursed just for having my name tied to it. But the quiet was better than the stairs, better than being a man hunted for crimes I hadn't committed. At one point someone asked, what kind of woman would hate a man so much she'd ruin his life like that? Joan, a close friend of Denise's, answered without hesitation. One who blames him for everything that ever went wrong in her life. When Amanda finally agreed to meet with us, Denise was the one who facilitated it. She picked Amanda up at the arranged location. As soon as they parked beside each other, Denise turned on the voice recorder on her phone and opened the passenger door. Amanda stepped inside and they headed into the building. The first question came from Ian, one of the investigators assisting us. Amanda, can you walk us through what was happening around the time you and your sister disappeared? And anything you've learned since? Amanda nodded. Miranda and I were woken up early that morning. Mom told us we were going on a trip, but we didn't know we'd never be coming back. We did over 20 hours of driving in just 2 days. No explanation, no warning. Denise leaned in gently. So what happened when you got near New York? Amanda hesitated. That's when Mom told Miranda to get out her purse and grab her new phone. It had a New York number. We didn't even know she had a new phone until that moment. Then she had Miranda pull up Google Maps, but we didn't realize it was guiding us to Ronald Morgan's house. Not until we were already almost there. Ronald Morgan. The man who had planned it all alongside Rebecca. It wasn't some spur-of-the-moment choice. It was orchestrated, precise, and it had involved the help of Rebecca's entire family. Denise quietly sent the entire recorded conversation to me, then forwarded it to my civil attorney. Amanda's testimony was direct, honest, and utterly devastating. Then she sent it along to the FBI. The entire time Amanda spoke, Denise watched closely. Amanda made no move to contact her mother. No hesitation. No attempt to shield anyone. Just before Denise prepared to leave, I texted her. I'll be waiting when you arrive. Amanda responded, thank you. When Denise returned, her eyes were filled with a quiet sadness. You know, she said, Amanda told me you used to be so outgoing. You were warm, open, always the first to strike up a conversation. I looked away. He can't be that person anymore, she continued. He's free, but he's not. There are still people out there who believe he deserves punishment, that he got away with something. They don't want justice, they want vengeance. And she was right. Even after all this time, even after all the evidence, I was still a prisoner in plain sight. These days I do my personal shopping a few towns over, where folks don't know my face or my story. It's getting better little by little. But even now my own family keeps their distance. I guess it's easier to believe the whispers than to face the truth. Divorce is never easy. But what I went through wasn't just divorce. It was abandonment, character assassination, and exile all rolled into one. In this town, there are still people who think I got away with something terrible. Some still believe I murdered my wife and daughters. That stain doesn't come off no matter how clean your conscience is. Amanda, she's grown into a remarkable young woman. Graceful, confident. And when I look at her, I see my mother's face plain as day. It hurt, because the rest of my family, my parents, my siblings, they cut me off after Rebecca disappeared with the girls. They believed the worst. I finished my cigarette, flicked it away and turned off the ignition. I sat there for a second, collecting myself, knowing this walk, just a few yards into the diner, would feel longer than any I'd ever taken. The same waitress from a couple weeks earlier, now filling in as hostess, saw me walk in. She gave me a small nod. She's here, she said softly. Amanda. I seated her and her friend near the back. I felt my heartbeat kick up. When I got to the table, Amanda stood and looked me right in the eye. "You know, Lynn probably loves you more than I do," she said. "She grilled you like an army sergeant before she even agreed to let me come here. She wasn't about to let you hurt me again." I nodded, taking it in. "I should have done more," she added. "I was old enough to find the truth myself. But I didn't. And I don't know if I'll ever really forgive myself for that." My voice cracked when I finally spoke. "Amanda, for 5 years I haven't had a life to offer anyone. I was just surviving. If someone had found a body, one of yours, I don't know that I'd still be here." She didn't say anything, just reached over and grabbed my hand. And then Denise, Helen as I call her in private, stepped beside me and took my other hand with a smile. "Well," she said, "I guess I'll be putting my house on the market. Because there is no way I'm letting you sell this place. I don't care how old you are, you're not running off without me." We shared a laugh, even if it came with a lump in my throat. Still, you can't help but feel a little awkward when your daughter catches you kissing someone new. Especially after everything. Amanda caught me and Denise sharing a quiet moment, and though she didn't say anything, the look on her face said plenty. But it passed. Over the next hour we sat and talked. She filled me in on the years I'd missed, college stories, first jobs, heartbreaks, little victories. She told me she was working in some lifeless office job, the kind where you know you'll never move up. Miranda texted her while we were sitting there, "Dad's with you? Bring my stuff too. And my laptop. The lawyers can deal with everything else." Amanda smiled when she read it. She fired off a reply, "See if you can pick up a copy of USA Today. There's an article about us, about everything. I didn't even know half of it myself. Call me soon, okay? I'll tell you everything I've found out." Later I stepped out onto the patio to get some air. Denise followed. "How are you feeling?" she asked gently. I turned to her, eyes heavy with years of sorrow and hope starting to bloom again. "Honestly," I said, "emotionally overwhelmed. But for the first time in a long while, I don't feel alone." When I answered the phone, I was already on my way to meet Amanda. "I'm just pulling in now," I said. "Perfect," Doug replied. "We figured she'd gone your way after last night. Just let her know Miranda saw the article online." He paused for a second, then added, "You might also be interested to hear that when we told Ronald Morgan the truth, he completely fell apart. Turns out, Rebecca had convinced Ronald that Miranda was his biological daughter. He truly believed it. But even now, after learning the truth, it doesn't change what he's facing. The charges still stand. He's looking at a long sentence. Oh, and by the way," Doug added, "as of Friday the court officially restored your daughter's legal last name. They're both Masters again." Hearing that did something to me. A weight I didn't even realize I was still carrying suddenly lifted. Later that weekend, Helen and I invited her sisters-in-law and their families over for dinner. They were clearly impressed with the house and the life Helen and I were building together. But when we offered to treat everyone to dinner, they politely declined, saying they'd rather come when we host our first real family housewarming party. That morning Helen and I were already at the airport by 7:15. We knew sometimes that connecting flight got in early, and we didn't want to miss a second. She'd already let her office know neither of us would be in that day. "Figured as much," they said. We saw the engagement news in the Sunday paper. I saw Miranda walking toward us first, suitcase in hand. She looked confident, grounded. When she got to us, I introduced her to Helen. Without hesitation, Miranda stepped forward and hugged her. "Amanda and I talked about everything yesterday," she said softly. "We went over all of it, what we learned, what we lost. And you know what? Mom didn't just lie to Dad. She lied to Ronald too. She manipulated everyone to make herself the center of it all." Her eyes met mine. She almost ruined 5 lives just to feel important. Then she smiled, one that finally felt free. "We know you and Dad are planning to get married. So from Amanda and me, we want to let go of the past. It's okay now." Helen's eyes filled with tears. "You couldn't have said it better, sweetheart." I took Helen's hand. "Well," I said, pulling a small box from my jacket, "since we're all being honest, Helen, I've been carrying this around all morning waiting for the right time." I opened the lid to reveal a beautiful 3-ring set I had custom made. "Will you marry me?" I asked. She smiled through her tears. "As soon as your divorce is final, absolutely yes." Miranda, ever the quick one, had her phone out and was already filming. She sent the video to Amanda with the message, "Yes, it fits." I had found out Helen's ring size from her brother earlier that morning. She never saw it coming. About 30 minutes later, Helen's phone rang. It was unexpected, and the tone of her voice changed the moment she answered. Miranda and I both turned to her, concern etched across our faces, as she slowly hung up and wiped away fresh tears. "What is it?" I asked gently. She took a breath and said, "I think everything is finally starting to heal." I understood what was happening the second Helen handed me her phone, her eyes already welling with emotion. "Congratulations, Dad," said the voice on the other end. It was Amanda. That one moment, hearing her call me Dad again, carried more weight than I can put into words. We had been through hell. We'd lost years. But somehow, piece by piece, we were finding our way back to each other. What we'd lost had cost us all deeply, but with time, effort, and honesty, we were starting to rebuild something real. Later that week, we all went in together, Helen, her son Chris, and me, to notify the office we'd be taking the remainder of the week off. Family had finally come first. Chris, though younger, was sharp. The kind of man who learned quickly that what gets taught in lecture halls doesn't always hold up in the real world. He wasn't afraid to admit what he didn't know. And in that, he gained the respect of everyone he worked with. He believed in learning by doing, by teaching others instead of letting them fail silently. His motto was simple: the only bad question is the one you're too afraid to ask. We could all use more of that attitude in this world. Around the same time, some long-awaited legal documents came through. The forensic analysts had confirmed what we already suspected. Rebecca's supposed witness documents were fraudulent. The notary's signature? Copied. The name? I had never used my full middle name in legal signatures. The witnesses? The recorded date of the signature was after they'd already left Missouri. The final nail? According to the court, Amanda and Miranda Peterson never legally existed. In the eyes of the law, they had always been Amanda and Miranda Masters. The court ordered that all records be corrected to reflect that. It felt like a truth we'd all known in our hearts had finally been carved into stone. Then came the sentencing hearing. Rebecca's attorney, visibly defeated, sat across from the bench. The judge asked, "So during settlement discussions, did your client admit to these forged documents?" "Yes, Your Honor," the attorney said quietly. The judge leaned in, cold and direct. "Are you really that incompetent in your field to think your client might have been telling the truth this whole time?" The attorney shook his head. "No, Your Honor." "How does your client wish to plead?" The room went still. "No contest," came the reply. Judge Preston didn't blink. "Then I sentence her to 5 years, to be served consecutively after any federal time." Her attorney tried one last time. "Your Honor, isn't that a little excessive?" "Not in my eyes," the judge replied firmly. "She can appeal if she likes. Justice doesn't undo the past, but it affirms the truth. And that matters." Not long after, I stood proudly at a family gathering and introduced the woman I would soon marry, and the daughters who were always mine, legally, emotionally, and forever. I introduced them with the respect they deserved. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel like a ghost. I felt whole. "I thought he deserved to hear it straight," Judge Preston said. "I told everyone in the room I'm not wearing the robe today, so this is just me talking as Don." Before we parted ways, he clapped me on the shoulder and said, "We still need to make that fly fishing trip happen, John. Before the heat gets ridiculous." I nodded, smiling. "You know where to find me." Later that afternoon, I found myself surrounded by the 3 women who had become the most important people in my life: Helen, Amanda, and Miranda. And let me tell you, no man alive has ever seen 3 women more excited at once. They were talking over each other, laughing, planning, catching up. After years of silence, I wasn't used to that kind of noise anymore. Honestly, I started wondering if I should have picked up some earplugs on the way home. At some point, Helen noticed me chuckling quietly and raised an eyebrow. "Want to weigh in?" she asked. I grinned. "As long as I don't have to pose in a tux for the wedding photos, I'll leave the rest up to you." She laughed. "Deal." Let's just say neither of us got much sleep that night, but not because of nerves or stress. We were too busy talking, dreaming, and letting ourselves believe that we were allowed this happiness. We chose Mother's Day to exchange our vows. Amanda stood beside Helen as her maid of honor. Miranda and one of Helen's nieces were her maids-in-waiting. Chris, my now trusted stepson, was my best man, and 2 of my nephews handled usher duties. It was a quiet, beautiful ceremony held right in our backyard, with a lake glistening behind us and a gentle breeze keeping the moment from feeling too perfect to be real. Life, they say, takes time to settle into peace, to mellow. But for me, peace didn't come quietly, it came screaming into the world at 7 pounds even. That's how much our son weighed. When Colin Richard was born, everything changed again. I remember calling my mother, who I hadn't seen much in recent years. Can you come to the hospital? I asked her. It's important. She arrived not long after and I rushed her down the hallway to Helen's room. Inside, Helen was sitting up, smiling, cradling our newborn son in her arms. This, I said softly, is Colin Richard. My mother broke down into tears. That name, Colin Richard, had history. It had heart. And hearing it spoken again, seeing her grandson for the first time, was all it took to break down every wall that had built up between us over the years.